The first thing I noticed was not the smoke. It was the silence. A heavy hollowness that settles when something holy is broken. I stepped onto my porch with the cup of coffee still warm in my hand and froze. Where the flag had always snapped in the wind, there was only a blackened pole and fine ash drifting like gray snow. My stomach folded up inside me. That flag was not cloth to me. It was a map of memory. It carried faces, names, nights I thought I would not wake, and the weight of promises I had made to men who never came home. When Karen burned it, she did not simply ruin a possession. She reached into a wound and twisted. She spat on every Marine who had bled under that banner. Rage came in hot, immediate, animal. My first thought was to cross the street and tear the woman to pieces. Okay? My training cut through that urge like cold water. Combat teaches patience. It teaches that you do not win by striking first. You win by striking right. I went inside and I planned. Word traveled faster than I expected. Neighbors peered from behind blinds. Rumors moved like rats. Then the truth came clean and sharp. Karen, the HOA president, had marched into my yard at dawn with a can of lighter fluid and a match. She called it neighborhood improvement. She called my flags eyesores. She smiled while fabric curled and died. I felt 1,000 hands on my shoulder that night as phones began to hum. Calls, texts. One message over and over. We've got you. They were not empty words. They were a promise. 2 days later, I watched a convoy of trucks roll down my street and stop in my driveway. Marines climbed out. Some wearing uniforms, some in old jackets with unit patches, some steady, some limping. All of them carrying the look of men who had learned to be terrible with the things they love and merciful with the rest. When Karen peered through her curtains and saw us, a small, pale fear crossed her face. She had never been looked at like that before. We did not come to make noise. We came to reclaim what could not be burned. We raised a flag that had been over Fallujah, patched, heavy with dust, threaded with the kind of history that makes a country remember itself. We put it up slow, hands steady, and the neighborhood watched as if watching a verdict. The silence that fell this time was not empty. It was full. Full of grief and of power tightened into restraint. Karen realized, perhaps for the first time, that the rules she loved were not absolute. She stormed into the street like a ruler betrayed. She waved bylaws like a dagger and hollered about fines, property values, and safety hazards. Her voice was shrill and high. It did not make men flinch. It only let them see the length of her fear. Sergeant Miller, a man who carried the missing weight of a leg, but not the missing weight of honor, moved forward in his chair. He spoke slowly, and every word landed like a bullet. "Ma'am," he said, "you have a choice. Back down now, or watch everything you built fall apart under light." Karen laughed and reached for the phone to call police. She believed the badge would protect her little kingdom. The first cruiser that arrived hesitated in the street. The officer took in the scene. A bitter HOA president. A group of Marines, a smoldering post, and the charred remains of something a nation remembers. I handed him the ash. Quiet, calm. No dramatics. "This is what she burned," I said. He looked at the woman, then at the evidence. He wrote a citation. That small piece of paper was a key. It opened doors. The Marines did not raise their voices. They did not shout in the street. They began to act in ways the law allows and the press notices. Someone on the team had experience with paperwork. Another had a friend who worked in a local paper. Within a day, an attorney was reviewing HOA rules. A veterans group was filing a complaint. A reporter was asking for an interview. We used every lawful lever. Criminal complaint, civil claim for property damage, requests for records showing Karen's abuse of office. We gathered witnesses, photos, receipts, the kind of careful truth that can choke a lie slowly and without mercy. Karen tried to fight back. She called emergency meetings and distributed handouts, calling us bullies. She wrote letters to neighbors accusing me of provocation. It did not help. Stories have a way of choosing sides, and the side with the truth usually wins. The local paper ran the picture of Marines standing under a newly raised flag, faces weathered and fierce. The dateline was sharp. A senator sent a terse letter demanding an account of the incident. Neighbors who had once been afraid to speak suddenly found voices. Someone who had been on the HOA board quietly demanded Karen's removal for misuse of authority. The board, once her shield, became a jury. Small humiliations multiplied, door knockers asking questions, a public hearing where she had to answer under oath, a phone full of messages from people who had never known her garden tyranny. She lashed out in petty ways. She tried to strip my privileges, threatened fines, and dragged me into a drawn-out process at the HOA. We countered with calm paperwork, with legal deadlines met and witnesses present. Every move she made only added to the record against her. The darker work did not come from violence, but from light. We shone it into corners she had thought safe. We found emails where she had lied about enforcement. We unearthed small abuses she had committed for years, a pattern. Men who had once smiled at her now testified about fear and intimidation. The press began to call. Her neighbors, seeing the pile of citations and the weight of public opinion, turned. Her friends left quietly. Her name, once spoken with deference, became a cautionary tale. In private, Karen tried to scare us with rumors. Threats of lawsuits, hints at ruin. The Marines laughed once, under their breath. Not because they scorned her pain, but because they knew how to weather storms. They knew the difference between a true threat and a frightened woman flailing at the last straw. We let the legal system move. We let the courtrooms do the heavy lifting. Justice, given time, is a slow but precise engine. The HOA vote to remove her passed. The board stripped her privileges and forced her resignation. A small obituary of power was printed in the local newsletter. Karen, ousted. It felt too clean and too small for what had happened, but it marked an end. In the weeks that followed, she tried to rebuild a reputation by accusing me of harassment and staging meetings meant to smear veterans. Those attempts fell apart under scrutiny. The attorney who had taken our case wrote a short, efficient letter that closed doors for her. Employers who had once overlooked complaints now received formal notices. People who had once accepted her tone realized they had been bullied into silence. Her life, the kingdom she had ruled with petty fiat, folded inward like a cheap umbrella. For us, the revenge was not a triumph of cruelty, but of restoration. We had not gone to her house in the night to do harm. We had not burned her name in blood. We had used what we had: truth, law, community, and the stubborn moral force that comes when a country's symbol is attacked. On the anniversary of the burning, we stood again beneath the flag. Veterans from across the state came. We read names. We lit candles. The flag fluttered, a living thing, and the sound of its fabric was a kind of music. I thought about the day Karen struck the match. I thought about the small animal surge of anger and the long, cold satisfaction of watching light and truth unmake what anger had hoped to take. The Marines do not sing of revenge. They speak of honor. But honor is not passive. It insists that wrongs be righted, that shame be faced, and that those who would harm the sacred learn that their acts have consequences. The flag over my porch no longer belonged to one man. It belonged to a brotherhood, to a neighborhood that had found its voice, and to a promise that what we hold dear will be guarded, not with fury alone, but with steady, merciless truth. Karen thought she had one when she lit the match. What she did not know was that in burning a symbol, she had lit a different fire, one that would not destroy, but would show the way forward.